Running it back on Locked On Baylor. I'm your host, Cam Stewart, ESPN Central Texas, and the Cam Show. We're going to talk a little bit of hoops here. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself because Baylor's next game is against Kansas State and Jerome Tang and that homecoming. A bogey team for Baylor. I don't think they've beaten Jerome Tang since he's taken over at Kansas State, which is kind of wild considering the ups and downs of his tenure there. He's 3-0 against Baylor. So that's Wednesday's game. We will talk about that, and there's all kinds of intrigue with him coming back and him on the hot seat and whether Kansas State can afford that. We're going to talk all about that this week. But I do want to take a moment to look at Utah, which is Baylor's opponent on Saturday, a team that Baylor beat by 25 points in the conference opener. Because looking at what they did over the weekend, I don't think this is the same Utah team. I don't. Because they took on arch rival BYU over the weekend and beat them in overtime. And the records aren't that different. And I think BYU has been like Baylor in that they've underachieved thus far. But I thought BYU was going to be a pretty solid I mean, a lot of people were picking them to be a dark horse in this conference. And I thought they were going to be a pretty good team again, just like they were last year, which, you know, they stubbed some toes last year. I don't think they were legit contenders for the Big 12 title, but they were a pretty solid team. And by the time the tournament came around, they were a hot pick to go to the Sweet 16. Didn't work, but I was kind of buying into the BYU hype in this offseason, the new coach and Egor Demin. I could still say that looking at a game between BYU and Utah, that BYU should have the top 3 players on the floor. Like, you know, Demin, Saunders, Traore, I would say, like, all those guys. I like Keita. I like what Keita can give to you. I think all those guys you could say are better than Utah's best guy. And yet this was kind of a classic Big 12 game on Saturday for two teams that are new to the Big 12. BYU in year 2, Utah in year 1. This was kind of a knockdown, drag out Big 12 basketball game. And Ezra Ausar, I think it's Ausar is how you say it. He was all over the place. He was awesome for them. Our pal Caleb Lohner had 2 points in 9 minutes, by the way. And Miro Little had 0 points in 3 minutes, which I think Miro was starting in the conference opener. Tough sledding for our former Bears. But this was an impressive win for Utah over the weekend, which has seemed to find, like, Utah has found out how to play basketball. They beat TCU, which, again, I'm not more impressed by after the Baylor win. I'm just more down on, the Baylor loss to TCU. I'm just more down on Baylor. But they went into Fort Worth and they beat TCU. Utah did. And now they go home, big game against a team that's obviously going to be way up for it, and a team that's more talented than them. And they beat them as well. And they put the clamps on Demin. Demin doesn't hit double figures again. I think he had 9 points, two assists. Guy who set the freshman record for assists in a game for BYU earlier this year. 2 assists. Just did not have his fingerprints on the game at all. And Utah went out there and beat him. I know it's not at the Marriott Center, which is a really tough place to play, but that's a big-time victory for that team to show that, hey, we can win in this league. Because a lot of people a couple weeks ago were not thinking they could win in this league. I certainly didn't, because I wasn't that impressed by Baylor going into the conference schedule, and then they just took Utah to the woodshed when no one was watching because we were all watching the Texas Bowl or getting ready for the Texas Bowl, and Baylor crushed them, just crushed them. And I thought this team does not belong in this conference in basketball. I think they should give up the sport, and I'm not saying they're going to be a tournament team, but these are a good couple wins on the bounce for Utah. And they're surprising some people with their current run. Same record as Baylor, by the way. Yeah, 11-6, and guess what? The same conference record as Baylor, 3-3. So you can't take Utah for granted. You absolutely cannot. And you've got them on the road this weekend. And if there's one thing that we've loved about Baylor basketball over the years, is they will use the altitude at any time. Remember Denver against Creighton? There was talks about the altitude. not getting up right to the altitude. Last year, BYU, scheduled loss. What did they do? They lost. Oh, but it's a great environment. Oh, but it's the altitude. Like, I can already hear it. I can already hear it coming. Utah's no basketball school, but they'll get up for this one. They'll have a decent crowd there. It's a team that's won a couple on the bounce. They're coming off a bad football season. They're a bad football team. And they're going to come in here and see that, Baylor's a wounded duck, whether they win or lose against Kansas State on Wednesday. And they're going to get up for this thing on a Saturday. And so Baylor's got to go out to Salt Lake and play Utah. And then Baylor's got to turn around and play BYU on the road on Tuesday. So probably going to stay out there. I can already feel the built-in excuses. The atmosphere, the altitude, new teams to the Big 12, shorthanded. It's already flooding my memory here. They need to go and pick one up against Kansas State on Wednesday. That is an absolute must-win. And I look at these next two, and I don't know if I can call them must-wins, but I would say inside that Baylor locker room, like, if you guys want to prove us wrong and you want to prove that you are still nailed-on tournament team that can beat good teams in this league, like, if you want us to respect you guys as a nailed-on tournament team that can possibly even get to the Sweet 16, if that's the leap that you want to make, you've got to win the next three. Right? Am I wrong? Like, you've got to beat Kansas State. That's no doubter. Like, if you want to prove you're a decent team, you got to be better than them, who made a game of it with Kansas Saturday, when it didn't look like they were going to. Didn't look like they were going to score in the first half. You've got to win that game, and then you've got to win a couple on the road. Like, I'm sorry, you have to. You just lost to a mediocre team at home. If you want the respect from the outsiders, from the fans, from the rest of your league, you got to win 3 in a row, and at least 2. Because you should still be, you have more talent than Utah. Right now, I think you have more talent than BYU. You definitely have more talent than Kansas State. It's time to put it together and show it, because that's what Baylor's problem's been this year. But Utah looks like a basketball team again, for the first time in a long time. But Utah looks like a basketball team. So anyway, that's a test all of a sudden for Baylor. Let me know what you guys think about how that game should go. Drop it down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe on the video. That helps out the channel a ton. It helps me bring more fresh Baylor content to you every day, twice a day, most of the time. We are the #1 destination for Baylor sports. Like, that's just a fact. We're the best Baylor sports show out there. Mainly thanks to you guys for making it such a great community. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and then find us wherever you find your podcasts. In fact, if you're just listening, that's great. Love you guys just the same, maybe even more, because I get more money from the audio downloads, if we're being honest. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, maybe across multiple platforms. It's going to help. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.